Our topic today is artificial intelligence. And over the last year, AI has been a major topic of interest across all industries. And that absolutely includes creative. And we're all working to understand AI's capabilities as well as its shortfalls, while also learning how to use this technology and streamline our day to day. So we were blown away by the interest in this webinar and the number of thoughtful questions that you as our audience posed. And while we can't answer them all, we would really be here for hours if we tried. We're going to do our best to address some of that we saw again and again by tapping into our panelists' experiences and perspective. Quick shout out again to that AI subsite on the Creative Circle webpage. A couple of things that you'll find on there is an AI tools glossary. We saw a lot of questions about that, like what software is out there, as well as generative AI use cases. So like, how can I use it in my role? And then again, blog posts covering staffing and hiring all around AI. But let's jump right in, and I'd love to introduce you to our panelists. We're excited to welcome these 3 creatives in our network who have leaned into artificial intelligence while shaping their creative paths and their offerings. So Laura, Claire, and Andrew, thank you so much for sharing your time with us, already sharing so much knowledge with me. Let's start with the intros. If you'd like to share your name, your current role, and why you're excited to be a part of this conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. So my name is Laura. I'm a writer. I want to consider myself a writer, and to pay for, rent and bills and everything, I'm actually a content designer. So this is what I do on a professional level. I am a freelance, actually. I work for myself, but I contract with companies. As of right now, the company that hired me to fix their issues within content design is Verizon. And what else should I tell you guys? I think that's pretty much it, right? So my role is content designer, content strategist. It comes from a story that I'll tell you in a little bit. And then I think that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hey, everyone. I'm Andrew. Nice to meet you all. Hi, everyone in the chat. Thank you so much for having me, Ash and everyone from Creative Circle. I'm a creative director for Pillar Marketing Group. We are a full-service digital marketing agency and brand consulting company in LA, based in El Segundo. So I'm just really excited to be a part of this panel and help everyone, disperse any knowledge that I've gained over really just my obsession with AI as what it's been over the past few months. So really excited to be a part of this.
And hi, everyone. My name is Claire Berlin, and I am the current Director of Academic Marketing Strategy at Ohio University. But before that, I was in the tech industry, so I really got my hands on all sorts of AI right as it was really coming out, and have a lot of experience with it. So I'm super excited to chat with the other panelists today about AI.
Love it. Quite the lineup we have here. So let's dive right into some of their experiences. Laura, you already kind of alluded to it a little bit about the evolution of your career and artificial intelligence. What were you doing before this role, and how did you evolve more into an AI-focused position?
So I started as a, let's say, simple copywriter. So someone that actually was just putting words into apps and websites, and those typical digital things. And I noticed that with time, that was something that I felt like it was missing. And so I thought, okay, so we need to make this more into something that it's just not words on paper, or in this case, words on a device. And I wanted to put a little bit of humanity behind it. So the way that you write to actually provide an experience to the person that eventually reads it. And that's how I made the switch from just a copywriter. So, don't think that I'm actually, telling bad things about copywriters at all, because I am one. but like someone that actually focuses more on the experience that the user eventually gets. So from copywriter, I switched to UX writer. And then I noticed that I could actually implement some of my studies from the past, because I have a master in psychology, and that helped me to actually figure out how I could put that psychological background to the things that I was providing, to those companies that were hiring me as a UX writer or content designer or content strategist, like someone that eventually has a grasp of content so that we can provide the best experience ever to the users or the clients or everybody that eventually feeds up of the content that we provide online. And so I think this is how eventually I went from this part to eventually use AI as part of what I actually needed in order to perform even better. And I think the approach basically came smoothly. So it's a progression of how you actually evolve as a writer. And the approach, I approached AI because I actually needed it. Like I needed to have that tool to help me be a better content designer, writer, or whatever you want to call it.
What you mentioned a couple different times is humanizing that experience. And when I often think about interacting with technology in my home is like, how do I get to that point of thanking Alexa, right? Having that conversation with that technology and humanizing it and having that experience. So it's really interesting to meet someone who's really the person putting the words into their mouths. And you mentioned a little bit about that, humanizing the conversation, modifying the words and language used in automated responses to really make that experience more pleasant, right? And we can talk about anything about you tapping into Alexa to bake chocolate chip brownies or going to a website to try to pay your bill. At the end of the day, you want a human experience, even when you're working with a piece of technology like that.
Correct. In fact, something that I noticed while I was working for these companies that were actually, bringing me on board to humanize this part of the writing for AI was that we had the chance to eventually provide that experience to whoever uses AI as if they were actually talking to a friend. So you don't feel that, back in the days they used to say, oh, I'm not going to have an Alexa because it just makes me feel like I'm talking to a robot. And eventually that's where we can actually, that's why we got hired, because, hey, we don't have to make that thing sound like a robot. It can actually just sound like a friend. So you just wake up in the morning. That's what I actually do. Like I have my Alexa set up so that I actually say, good morning, Alexa. And it just starts all the things that I needed to, to have, I don't know, the light on, and then the coffee machine turns on. So yeah, those things that actually makes you feel like you have a friend rather than a robot next to you. That's what I wanted to actually create with my experience.
You alluded to this just a bit ago, talking about using AI to improve the AI experience. So as a conversational content designer, how are you using ChatGPT? How is it a tool for you or a resource?
Well, in my case, for example, what I do, I use it as, let's say, an energy saver. So I need it because, if we have to create something, to be written down and to actually be provided to the user, we need to make sure that it's clear, it makes sense. And ChatGPT, in a way, helps you with that because it basically skims through whatever is out there in the World Wide Web. And by providing you with this skim content, you can actually grab those info that you have, let's say, easier to see on the AI produced content, and then you just use it. You use it as an inspiration. Basically, it's like your muse. So you use that, and you don't make it use you, which is something that I know a lot of people now are actually scared about. Just like people saying, "Don't use this because they're gonna, take over and everything." No, because you can actually use it as a tool. And so the part of having that human version of a robot, actually, not because you have to use it, but you can actually, make the AI help you. And then you can actually help the whatever situation that you're in, whether you're providing a good user experience or maybe you have something for yourself at home. So anything can actually, be seen as, I'm going to use AI as in ChatGPT in my case, because I'm a writer, as a tool that helps me save time, come up with a better idea, and just an inspiration, basically, like a muse. I would say that.
I love your analogy of a muse. And we saw a little bit in the questions that were asked and even some of the statements that were shared prior to this webinar. People were really talking about using it as a brainstorming tool. Now, Claire, I'd like to hear from your approach from the marketing perspective. Walk us through how you're using artificial intelligence on your projects.
So it really is that. It is a tool in your toolbox. It might not be the most expensive tool that's going to do the job every time right now, but I think it's getting there. What I really like about it is it's so open-ended. You can use it for anything. So what I, predominantly have used it for is when I'm stuck trying to write something and I'm like, this is not the right word I'm looking for. It's great kind of starting that sort of creative process. Sometimes I feed it in certain things and I say, here's the top 3 value props that I need for this marketing campaign. Help me think of a unique way that I can market this, or what is an alternative way that I can talk about this language that someone can understand it. And to me, it's a great starting point. It's not the end all, the be all. It's not going to spit out a perfect marketing strategy. It's not going to replace a marketer. But it is a great brainstorming tool. And like Laura was saying, it's a muse. It can help you refine your creative process, because we all get those little roadblocks and we're all like, I don't know a different way to say what I'm already saying. It's perfect for that. It's one of those things where I think you can utilize it and take bits and pieces that really match what you're looking for and forget about the rest. And then try it and see what happens. But like I said, it's not going to replace a marketer right now, but it is another tool in your toolbox that you can use.
Yes, and I think that to that point, there's been so many questions that are being asked right now, or even again before the webinar, talking about like, is this replacing creatives, or how should we be viewing this? And I think it's really important. You mentioned like welcoming it as a tool. And I think that one thing we hear from all creatives is that no matter what your role is in an organization, oftentimes you're expected to wear many hats. And a lot of our registrants and our guests here wanted to know, how are you incorporating AI into your creative workflow? And I understand this is probably dependent on like the role or the project, but Claire, can you get a little bit deeper into how you're using AI to streamline your projects and process?
Yeah, and to me, and honestly, there's a new AI coming out every day, it seems like. So I can't keep up with all of them. But there are some really great AI note takers that you can have on your Zoom meetings or on your Google Meets meetings. And that's a really fantastic way to kind of have an information dump. So you're not taking notes at the same time. You can be actively listening to either your client or the people you're having a specific conversation with. And then it spits out all those notes for you fairly accurately. But then you don't have to go back through and be like, well, what did I say? Or what did we agree on for a due date? It's usually all right in there. So that's a great way to look at imparting a little bit of AI into your day-to-day basis. But also it's a great way to just start building a framework. If you're perhaps a new student that just graduated from university, maybe a new intern, you get an assignment and they're like, hey, we're going to need you to build this framework or this, draft up a strategy. And maybe you're not quite sure where to start. It's really, really perfect for that. It gives you some frameworks. It gives you some guidelines. They're not the be all and end all, like I said, but it's a nice point to kind of at least start your process. But also, I found AI really useful as far as just generating ideas. It can be text for ad copy. It could be something that you want to put on social media. It could even be a draft of a blog post, and then you can fill it in with human language later. So it really connects on that person-to-person basis. But really, it's anywhere you want to start. And I think for some people, when they say, I don't know how to use AI in my daily work, or it's intimidating to know where to start, I've always found that if you start with a topic that you're an expert in, that ask ChatGPT, ask Google Bard to tell you about this topic that you're really knowledgeable on, and see what it comes back. Because who's the best person to know something that you're knowledgeable about? It's you. And you can see the limitations. Maybe the AI is way off base, but maybe it's also pretty on base. And that can kind of give you a really good insight as to its capabilities. So you can trust it a little bit more when you're typing in something like, tell me about X topic, or what about Y? So I always tell people, start first with something that you are knowledgeable in, and then you can base what the AI spits back on that.
That's an interesting kind of a test, if you will, because I think too, putting on that human layer to it is always so important. You already talked about it being a muse, it being the start of your brainstorming, but also giving a little bit of a fact check, especially based on your own experience. And one thing I will say in utilizing AI in my role, and it really is still very elementary, is just to get out of my own head a little bit, get out of my own experience a little bit, and get a bit of a different perspective. And Andrew, I know we've talked a little bit about you yourself as a in your role in creative, having to wear so many different hats. And how are you using AI from the design and creative direction standpoint?
Oh man, we're using it so much. I could go in a billion different directions, but we use it so much for like every project that we find ourselves working on. So for instance, if we're starting, a client with a social media calendar, the first thing that we'll do, we've built in like Zapier automations so that we type into ChatGPT, like make a social calendar for us based on these parameters, the tone of voice that the client wants, and then it spits out a calendar format. We put that in Excel, and then we have ChatGPT write caption copy for every single one of those posts that it generates. So I mean, like it's really augmenting our process in huge ways, and it's becoming like the missing piece to a puzzle for us in a lot of ways. And also on a personal assistant level, like graphic design is primarily what I'm doing day in and day out. And it's such an amazing tool for that as well. So I mean, really, if we have also like, if we're trying to solve a problem for a client, it helps us, and we have like an intuition for how to solve that problem. ChatGPT is the biggest one for us that helps us like work through that intuition and find possible solutions. It's just giving us new perspectives. Like Claire was saying earlier, it's really like helping you think through all these things. Some basic stuff too, like just writing emails, like various stages of web design we've used it for, to like develop site maps and upload an XML file into a program so that you can visualize it. There's so much you can do with it. It's pretty crazy.
There was a lot of questions about how can different teams start to utilize this as a team, not just like an individual using AI to streamline their own process, but to collaborate. And I think that the example that you just provided is such a great way to go. I mean, there's so many different legs to artificial intelligence in terms of how it can help you streamline your process, build out that base, use the muse. And when you and I first connected, I also really appreciated how you mentioned that you yourself are growing and learning from AI. The fact that you have to write prompts into this technology actually pushes you to be more accurate in terms of how you're explaining what the end goal is, how you're explaining what the audience is. And that challenges you then to ask better questions of the clients. Anything else to share on that note?
Yeah, I think it's kind of it's weirdly unintuitive when somebody hears like what ChatGPT is and what prompts can do. It's like, oh, so I can just type anything in and it'll make me what I want. And like intuitively, that feels like it should be the case. Like you should say, like, can you make me a picture of like a teddy bear, but it has 4 arms and it's wearing a teacup for a hat? Like, but you didn't consider like what style do you want it drawn in? Is it a photorealistic portraiture of like an actual stuffed animal? Is it claymation? Like there's so many directions you can go in. And especially just even typing in ChatGPT like a word prompt, it forces you to look at yourself and say, am I asking it the right question? Because the better you can formulate your own prompts, it's really like you're working on yourself the whole time. It's not really like ChatGPT is this like, what can you do with infinite knowledge? Like not a lot unless you're asking the right questions, I think is how I look at it. So it's constantly forcing me to iterate on my own thinking as I'm using it, which is a brilliant way of using it. It's it doesn't necessarily make what you want unless you can articulate that. And I think that point is really powerful.
I would absolutely agree. And you mentioned utilizing prompts over and over again. I'd love to hear, like, do you have resources that you use for these prompts, or is it truly just like experience after experience helps you get a little bit clearer in the picture that you're trying to develop with AI?
Yeah, so like my journey with AI has been like I've been on ChatGPT since 3.0 or version 3. So like there wasn't a lot of exploration of prompt, like the term like prompt engineering was just surfacing and people were figuring out that you could do all these crazy things. So I was like digging into like Reddit and Reddit posts and seeing what people were doing, just kind of going wild with it. Now there's a lot of really great resources. So I mean, even if you Google like, you know, ChatGPT prompts for X, whatever you want that to be. You know, if you're a marketer, look up ChatGPT prompts for marketing, ChatGPT prompts for design. I mean, there's so many things, right? Google is now your resource for it because people have done that work. So I would encourage you to just do a simple Google search. But I think it's also really fun just to be on your own journey and figure out like, ooh, like what happens if I tweak the prompt this way? What if I add like, what if I prompt it to be an expert in something? And that's something that I figured out was really interesting. So if you're trying to get a specific answer as a marketer, if you ask it a question, a marketing question, it might spit out some roughly relevant information. But if you say, here's my client, you are an expert marketer, I want you to make this, it will act as an expert marketer, and it's like volume for the professionalism and the answer it gives will be turned up to 100. It's kind of crazy. So
Wow.
prompting it is a big hack as well.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I know we've been talking a lot about copy and more so like content creation, but Andrea, I'd love to hear too from the design perspective, what AI tools are you using regularly on the design side?
Yeah, we're using a lot. We're using, so personally, I'm using Midjourney, and what surpassed that recently for me is DALL-E 3. I mean, this is all evolving now. So like when we talked about starting this call, like DALL-E 3 wasn't out and now it's out. That's how fast it's moving. It's moving in a matter of weeks. I mean, it's incredibly fast. So I'd keep your eye out for that. Like DALL-E 3 is an incredibly, right now it's free, I believe. It's in its research phase. So just make an OpenAI account, start making stuff. It's really cool. We're also using Photoshop's generative AI feature. So that's baked into Photoshop now. You know, if you have the latest update, you can just start generating stuff, which is pretty cool. So those are what I like to call infinite graphic resources. So like as a creative, we're always scrubbing through unsplash.com or Pexels or any other content aggregation site that maybe you have to pay photos, you know, for these photos that are high quality. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that there's always a place to use real photos. But I think when you use, like, there's a lot of niche stuff too. Like if I need a texture of like a green and black army camo texture, and then like a specific kind of like dirt floor, that I want to start layering stuff onto Photoshop, like I'm making some, you know, very niche graphic, you can make that in seconds using Midjourney and DALL-E 3. And the better you describe it, the more it will look like what you want, which is pretty incredible. It's really a tool that I'm using every single day in my designs.
Oh, wow. Well, it's been some time since I have actually been on the production side of things and working with Photoshop, but I shared when I studied abroad, and this is like 2008, I was in New Zealand. I took an advertising class, and I remember we were assigned to do advertisements for like an eco-friendly kitchen cleaner. And I was pulling all these different images from all these different resources that I could find, and to be able to time travel, go back and like explain what I was trying to envision. It's just really, it's mind-blowing. Granted, it's been some time since 2009, but you know. All right, so another time-consuming part of creative and of the creative process can be the research aspect of it, right? You want to go in with some solid base knowledge either of your client or of the industry itself, and again, even target audience. So how are you using AI as a research tool? And Laura, I'd love to hear from you in terms of what you're using it in your perspective.
Absolutely. And fun fact, to connect with what Andrew was saying, the fact that you can actually use prompts in a specific way to get the results that you need when you do research, that is basically one of the fundamental way to interact with AI. And in my case, to do the research that I need when I work with these companies that, for example, ask me to make whatever they have on a general content level more conversational, so that we can actually translate it into copy that can be used for chatbots, for example. If you insert the prompt properly, you actually get all that, let's say, kind of like already reviewed by AI content that eventually you can just grab and use as the, let's say, foundation of what you're about to create. And an example that I can think of is that like super silly, if you try to use ChatGPT, for example, and you just say, you're a girl who needs to talk to her mother about this and this situation. ChatGPT just starts talking to you, and it just, creates this long story, and you're like, no, wait a second. I need only like 160 characters because I have to put this into a chatbot. And you can actually just say, you actually modify the prompt and you just say, you're a girl that needs to talk to blah, 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 blah. Do this in 160 words, for example. And ChatGPT does it. So the way that you can set boundaries, you can put the limits on, you can make it even more personal and say, you're an angry girl who wants to talk to her very, I don't know, harsh mother. You can actually just add all those little hints so that the better prompt you give to AI, the better result it gives you. And it basically matches whatever needs you have in order to use that info and then implement it to, I don't know, if you're creating a chatbot for a mental health app. Or in my case, now that I'm working for Verizon, it's a chatbot that actually needs to tell you how you have to pay your bill. So all these situations are things that I can actually test myself on another platform and see eventually how it comes out for the company that I'm working for, so that I can pinpoint exactly what I need and use, whatever I got as a response for myself. So that actually, I can create something and say, hey, by the way, we could actually use this version because it's clearer, it's better, and it goes straight to the point. And people can actually, you can see the difference between having to spend hours and hours brainstorming of what the best solution would be to insert into a chatbot, when you can actually already have a chatbot in a way do it for you, and then you basically just skim through it and you grab whatever you need for your need. So that's the way I use it. And another example that I can actually provide for myself when I'm not working, there are AI generated images that you can have as a plain flat image, and then you go to a website that actually uses I'm not sure what exact part of AI they use, but they make it into motion. So if I don't know, I'm going to upload a picture of my dog sitting, and then I actually ask AI to make it look like she's actually, giving you a paw. AI can do that, and then I can use that, turns it into a I don't know, a GIF or GIF or whatever you guys want to name it, or anything, like picture in motion, that you go from a flat surface to something that actually has, like 3D and all that kind of stuff, which to me is actually kind of useful, because then you can actually use that image and put it into another AI generated thing that actually creates I don't know, the background of that picture. So with just one thing, you basically created like a short movie or like a trailer of a movie by just having something super flat turn into something that has a background, has motion. You can add audio that can also be, generated by AI. And you basically just have a product that from zero became something, all fully, I don't know how to say it, like you can at your disposal from zero. You got it, thanks to AI.
I think it's incredible to see that it's like a floodgate opens of resources, of images, and then you can come back and really delegate in terms of what you need for whatever project that you're looking for. You mentioned the animation, you mentioned the short video. I mean, I feel like I could get down a really deep rabbit hole in some of these little projects, which is awesome. Claire, I'd love to hear from the marketing standpoint. We've talked a lot about design and video and copy. What other ways are you using AI in terms of research for your audience or persona research?
persona research is the big thing. It is so helpful for that. But like Laura and Andrew have already said, it's all about the prompt too. So you got to put some guide rails on either, whatever AI you're using. But one thing I find it really great is for telling me about a target audience. So like myself, I'm a millennial. I've had a lot of different marketing and communication jobs, but I am also not a doctor. So if I am doing a marketing strategy and trying to learn about my target audience, which perhaps is someone in a medical practice, I don't know a lot of what their day-to-day looks like. I don't know some of the things they care about. I don't know what type of language they usually use in normal conversations, or if I want to send them an email, what kind of language really resonates with them. So typing something like that into AI and say, hey, I'm working on this. I want to target medical professionals in my state. They probably have a MD degree. They've probably been in their physician practice for 30 plus years. What are the main characteristics of them? What words or language or themes do they tend to gravitate towards? And then it usually spits out something that is at least a starting point, if not fairly accurate. You can also ask it, hey, I have no idea what a chief technical officer does at a Fortune 500 company. Tell me what they care about. What are some of their goals for their year typically? So I can see, hey, maybe my product or my service aligns with some of those priorities for that CTO. So it's really cool for doing some things like that when you're just in the beginning stages. You can even ask it a lot of questions about, hey, I don't get young kids these days. Whatever their generation is, tell me the key points and factors about this. It's super helpful for that. But also, beyond just doing some prompting about personas and your target audience, it's a really great way to have it provide some kind of basic feedback about, like, let's say a client's website. A client comes to you and says, hey, I think our content isn't really relevant to our audience, or something just it's not clicking there with either our product or our service and the people that we're targeting. So drop that client's website into AI and say, hey, take a look at this specific page and maybe this About Us page and maybe the product page, and tell me point blank, what are the key values or the value propositions that you get from this language on their website? And AI can usually come back and be like, oh, this is what I think are the top value props. If you want to go even deeper, you can do that by personas. Say, hey, take a look at this product page as if you were a chief technical officer in a Fortune 500 company, and let me know if you think this content is relevant to your role and your persona. And it's pretty crazy what it can do. Like, it's wild. And to me, it is almost like a Cliff Notes version. It's not the full version, it's not in depth, but it's a pretty good starting point and at least gives you some background information. But I always like to put the caveat that don't take what it spits out with 100%. This is the perfect, thing, and this is totally 100% accurate, because it's not that close.
It always needs that extra set of eyes, as you all have mentioned. And one question that we actually got through the chat that I think goes really nicely with this is, how transparent are you with your clients about your use of AI? How are you setting that up on the upfront to let them know this is a tool that we're going to be using, and here is the value in it? Anyone want to share their perspective on that?
Yeah, I can chime in real quick. I think that's we do tell our clients, in fact, that's a part of our process, is that we walk them through the stages of, here's how we use this AI tool, and this is why we can get your social calendar done in a fraction of the time compared to if we weren't using it. Here's how we're using generative AI to make images. And I think the clients are delighted. I mean, at every turn, they're seeing that we can create more things that are higher fidelity in a quicker amount of time. It just allows us to be, to concept way quicker with the client. And the outcome is that they're way happier for it.
And to connect with this, I can actually tell you that not in my actual professional environment, but in my, let's say, creative environment. So where I actually, work for my own self. For example, I had the chance to work for audiobooks where people were saying, like, the client itself is actually going to tell you, please don't use AI because blah, 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 because, it's those people that actually approach AI with a little bit of skepticism and everything. And then you actually just tell them, let me give you a sample and let me show you how, if I read this audiobook for you, it's going to sound human and yes, and whatever. But if you want some, for example, a specific accent, you don't like the fact that I have a specific accent when I do your audiobook for you, I can actually make you listen to what a very well produced AI audio sounds like, also because there's a way to actually produce the audio. It's not that you just input the words and then you have a voice repeating it just like a normal text to speech. You actually have more nuances added to it, and then it's getting, just like Andrew said earlier, it's getting better, day by day. You see all these differences. I'm not sure if we're there yet, but you can also get to the point where you have an audiobook read by AI in English, American English, but that sounds like it's a person from India that learned English. So all these little nuances, and then you actually, you send the audio sample and you're like, do you like it this way? Oh, thank you. Yes, see, you shouldn't have used AI to do this because with the human voice, it sounds better. And my response is always, that wasn't my human voice, that was AI. So, like this way of actually, showing the skeptics most of all, that this is actually a very useful tool for all you need. If you need something that actually sounds human, you don't necessarily have to have a human do it. You can actually use AI, which is mind blowing for me, but it exists.
Yeah.
And I will say just one more thing on, the ethical elements of AI is that I've spent time working with clients on it, inputting meeting notes, inputting websites, things like that, and then asking it to spit something back out. But I never want to downplay the importance of having a human review what comes out of it. Because I can't tell you how many times I put in a lot of information, data, like pages of things that I'd read, but I didn't remember everything that was in that. And then it would highlight like, oh, here's a great statistic that you should use in your marketing campaign. Here's something you should put on an ad. And I'm like, wow, a 95% client satisfaction and retention rate? I was like, I don't even remember seeing that in any of the notes that I took or any of the data I pulled off the websites or anything. And so I just asked, I said, ChatGPT, where'd you get this amazing fact? And it just said, oh, I made it up. And I was like, can you imagine if I took that and presented it to the client and the client says, we don't have a 95% client satisfaction rate? Like, how embarrassing for a creative, but also it shows you the limitations, and it's not going to be truthful and say like, oh, by the way, the stat I put is like made up, unless you ask it. It's not there yet.
And we're going to get into a little bit more into that ethical piece, but also, Claire, you shared a very interesting story with me just a few weeks ago about, it was a New York Times article talking about a lawyer who really put all of their eggs in one basket, leaning on ChatGPT to create like basically like what a ruling was on some case that never existed. And so I've seen a couple questions here about like, what are we worried in terms of like copyright or just sending it out directly? And I think the biggest thing is like, no, there needs to be that human interference, the human check. And we've talked already about how leaning too heavily on AI will hurt you in the end game. So I'd love to hear a little bit more too. I know we've dipped our toes a little bit into the ethical pieces of it, but what other intentional or ethical elements should we be keeping top of mind when using this technology? Andrew, if you want to.
Yeah, absolutely. I just touching on what Claire said before too. It's like you have to be intentional with your approach, your use and approach with AI. Like if a really quick way of getting let go of your job is if you submit something that was totally AI generated and you did not double check it once, right? So like there's a lot of pitfalls to AI. And one of them, the primary one right now that's being worked on, but I don't think you should ever count on it being fully confident, personally, is hallucinations. Hallucinations is a big problem with AI. It will make up information and be very confident about it. So, always double check the work and use it as a supplement. Like when I talk about using AI in my work, it's never replacing a thought process in a creative, in the creative like ladder to accomplishing a goal for a client. And it should never be for you either. It should be a supplement. It should be like an assistant. You should always double check the work and embellish on it more. So.
Thank you, Andrew.
I will say one thing to, you know, if we're playing, you know, both sides here, AI is great, but also AI is scary. You don't know, you know, the privacy policies behind whatever company comes up with the latest and greatest AI. You don't know what kind of regulations they have, what kind of, you know, security they have, but also anything that you input into this AI, it can spit out for anyone else in the entire world. So that's a little bit concerning if you're entering in maybe healthcare data, or please don't input like your bank information or things like that. You know, it sounds a little like this is, you know, you're thinking too seriously about this, but you just never know when that information is going to come up, whether it's yours, whether it's a client's personal info that they shared with you in a meeting. You just have to be very, very conscious of that, I think.
Yeah, another thing too is just like the concept of digital hygiene, like exactly what you're saying, Claire. Like don't upload stuff that you don't want up there. I mean, ChatGPT, like OpenAI is using everything that's currently online and things that are currently being fed to it as training data for future instances. And it's not a bad thing. It's just a fact of the matter, but you have to be aware of that because anything that the AI knows has to come from things that already exist. A chess AI has to be trained on how actual chess players play chess, just as a chatbot has to be trained on, like if you're a marketing expert, you're asking it things about marketing, it's going to spit back things that people have already come up with. So it's only as good as the training data, and I think just being aware of that is really important too.
My dog is howling. Apologies. We knew this was going to happen. Laura thought it was going to be her dog, but my dog sings at sirens. So there we go. So thank you so much. I think that that's really important. And we got a lot of questions about like managing or checking the inherent bias that AI provides as well, because it's only working with so much information provided from a certain timeline. It doesn't have the context of it, doesn't have the history, the experiences of it. So it's so important to have that human element of it. And leaning on it as that brainstorming tool, as giving you another perspective, but also keeping that perspective a little bit in check. And I think to both Andrew and Claire's point, that digital hygiene is so important. Being conscious of the information that you're putting into AI, as that is now open to anyone who is going to be using that technology. As we see AI evolve, and Andrew, you already mentioned how quickly it's evolving and new software and products coming up weekly. I would love to hear a little bit about how you expect the creative industry to evolve as AI becomes more prevalent. Laura, tell us more like what you're seeing in content and copywriting.
I can tell you that the way that it's evolving, just like I was mentioning earlier, and everybody else did, the fact that it's, you know, getting better and better day by day, you can basically tell that it's going to be a time saver. It's going to save time for you. And also, if I can mention that, like mental energy, like the fact that you don't have to sit there and actually coming up with ideas because you already have someone that can actually help you, something that can really help you, that is, you know, a big time saver. And also I would like to remind everybody that the way that it evolves is based on us, because the way that AI is kind of created and the way that it grows is because of all the information and the data that we basically had as humans we actually provide. So it will get to the point where I think we will not just use it, but kind of like depend on it, but in a good way. So not something like, not in a toxic, codependent, whatever relationship, like in a way that we actually, I don't know, just like the example that I said earlier, the fact that you wake up in the morning and you can actually just enunciate like what is called an utterance to the AI and actually just say good morning, and you have your routine that gets started. So it's just something that helps you. So it gives you support. It helps you in case, even just think about the Apple Watch. If you fall, it detects the fall and it actually connects you to the emergency. So if you're alone and you live by yourself with your dog and something happens and you don't have anyone to help you, you can actually rely on this. So it's just that extra help, extra support that you can get. And the way that it's evolving, it makes me feel like you can actually rely on it more and better. So because it's more reliable, it's, you know, it has more data to rely on. So I am very positive about it. And I don't know why there are still, you know, I understand there are, you know, there's skepticism because it has to be, but that also helps you understand that you can actually study it and make, you know, do your research and see somebody thinks that it's not for them and somebody else actually needs it. And that's all the companies that I'm working for now, they're all turning to actually implementing AI. So I use it for Snapchat because Snapchat is based on something that actually you can talk to AI. If you're alone, if you don't have friends, you have AI that you can actually talk to for Snapchat, which is super weird. You can customize it. You can make it your own. Which sounds crazy, but it's actually, you know, it's with everything that has been going on after COVID and everything, it's a tool that we needed. And I'm glad that it actually, you know, came up. We just need to make sure that we put the boundaries and we just use it the right way, because everything, you know, anything can be healthy in this world until you actually abuse of it. So if we don't abuse of AI, then it's just going to be there for us to help. I think that's the way I think.
This is like a very elementary comparison, but I think about just using like the software of Word and then using like the spell check and then how you do get like grammar check and like, is this most concise way of saying it? And then I've also noticed on like Microsoft tools, they talk about, is this accessible to people with different abilities, right? People that have a hard time with the vision. And those are things that from my experience, I wouldn't necessarily consider, but I'm getting open to it and I'm learning, and I'm then using that to still provide my own content, put on my own resources. But that's kind of, again, a very elementary comparison, but that's kind of, as you're talking, that's what I'm coming to mind. Andrew, tell us a little bit more about your perspective on AI's evolution and how the creative industry will be adapting.
Yeah. I want to preface my answer too with a little bit like that question, I think to a lot of people can be as scary. Like the answer is scary to find out, right? Because when people think of AI, they think of people replacing others. Like they think of humans not being an integral part of the process anymore. You know, take it for what you will, but my perspective is that AI always needs that human element to tap into creativity. Like the term creativity inherently comes from the humanness inside it. Like our unique experiences as people is what shapes our output as creatives. And that's why we're different. Otherwise, if I gave you and everyone on this panel the task of creating a certain graphic with certain parameters, we wouldn't all create the same thing. We grew up in different places. We had different experiences. We had different parents. We had different upbringings. We saw different things in life that shaped us and our moral systems and our lens as to how we look at reality. That all matters when you're talking about creativity. In fact, that's the driving focus, in my opinion. So, I mean, in terms of AI affecting the field, yes, you may be less of like learning hard skills and you might be more of a conductor. But again, that's saving you time. Like you can concept in minutes instead of weeks. And I think that the closer that you can get to creating at the speed of thought, like the closer we are to a better world. That's just my opinion on the matter. But I think that there can be downsides, but I think the upside is huge from this.
I liked your analogy of the acting as a conductor too. I think that's a good way of looking at it. Something that we've been seeing a lot when people registered and also in some of the Q&As that are being submitted right now is how do I amp up my AI experience? And what resources can I use to become more fluent in AI? And Andrew, you talked a little bit about this too, but if there's anything else that you would like to share in terms of what tips you have for people who are looking to expand their AI knowledge.
Yeah, I like get out there and get your hands dirty. Like just glancing at the chat, I see a lot of people like asking questions and like, you should be asking Google this. You should be asking ChatGPT this. Like, if you don't know how it works, ask it how it works. It will tell you how it works. like get into the playground and start playing, right? Make a Midjourney account, make an OpenAI account, play with DALL-E, play with ChatGPT, and pay attention to like how your words are affecting the outputs and tweak those prompts and just have fun with it. I mean, as a creative, I love just like going out there and making images because it's like I don't know, it's just an open playground for me. Like how could you not enjoy it? It's just like it's like playing as a kid with like Legos but on steroids, right? And again, like I think in terms of the learning aspect, I like to say that I graduated from YouTube University alongside my real university because, you know, there's so many great content creators out there now. Too many people to list, but if you go out there and search on YouTube, there's great tutorials on how to use all these AI programs, and it doesn't have to be intimidating or as big as you think. Start small, figure out how it can augment your, you know, day-to-day life, and start using it. And you'll be surprised at the things that you haven't thought of until you start playing in that sandbox.
Thank you, Andrew. Claire, anything else to add from your perspective? And you've actually had a time also training other people in using AI.
Yeah, and that's the thing is AI is intimidating. It's the same way when people thought when computers first came out and they're like, oh, computers are, you know, they're big and they're scary. And yeah, it is scary and it is intimidating, but it's really easy, like Andrew was saying. Take that first step, make an account, don't pay for AI, get a free account version and just type it. Just see what comes back. Ask it, why is the sky blue? Why does my neighbor keep a truck in their lawn? I don't know. Ask it to tell you a joke. And anything like that, just to kind of see what its capabilities are. But you know, YouTube University, great. There's amazing content creators on LinkedIn that are sharing their prompt guidelines on like, here's how I got the best output from ChatGPT. Google has some really great free AI courses. So there's tons of places you can learn information from on it, and you just gotta set aside a little bit of time and dip your toes in the AI water.
I love it. I love it. Well, we are just about 5 minutes till wrapping, and I wanted to take a moment here for each of our panelists to share where they can be found or if there's a way to connect with them. And then also your final and your last thoughts on AI. We've covered a lot of ground today, some that we had already planned for, some stuff that came up organically. But Andrew, would you take us home?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, look, there's always room for creatives at the table. Like there's so much out there. I think that the worry is that I sense in people is that people will want things faster, they'll want them to be cheaper, and they'll want you to work harder. But I think the fact is that our level of effort will stay the same. I think we'll be able to do more. It empowers us to do more, and it empowers us to think quicker and be more relaxed instead of more stressed. And of course, at the end of the day too, like not everything is going to be made by AI. Like just this scary stamp that nothing has a human touch anymore. The fact is that people all over the world still need specialists, and they come to people who are really good at one-of-a-kind designs. Like in the design world, it's not going to remove that person who's extremely good at typography. I think of like Seb Lester or someone who's like a calligraphy master. Like that doesn't go away. It's AI is joining the part of the conversation and boosting creatives. It's not taking away.
Thank you, Andrew. And where can our guests find you, Andrew?
Yeah, they can find me on LinkedIn at Andrew. If you just look up Andrew Mourner, I'll pop up. I'm only one of two Andrew Mourners, so not that many out there. Instagram.com/Andrew Mourner. You can search up just my first and last name. And pillar.la is our marketing agency. So that's where you can find me.
Thank you, Andrew. Claire?
Well, my final thoughts on AI is I think it's super cool. And I'm excited to see where it goes, especially transforming, you know, healthcare. How do you work with your doctor on different things? But also, you know, I encourage an overabundance of caution using it. I have heard, you know, CEOs and people of companies that are like, oh, I'm just gonna, you know, get rid of my writers or get rid of my designers, and it's all gonna be done with AI now. I'm gonna save so much money. And I think that's a bit of a misstep because while it's a tool, it's not a human and it's missing that human element very much so. I think it might continue to get better, but I don't think it's going to replace, having a human that can write these things, design these things with that human experience that they've had. AI can't replicate that yet. So I think there's probably more to come. And for me, feel free to reach out, find me on LinkedIn. There's probably a couple Claire Berlins, but I'm one with purple hair, I guess.
Your distinguishing factor, that and so much more, Claire. Thank you. Laura, your final thought and where our guests can find you.
Yes. So obviously, I second everything that my colleagues have said. And also just one thing that I would just remind everybody is just like back in the days when Google Translate came out and everybody thought that, oh, so now interpreters and translators are going to lose their jobs and everything. And yes, there was, like a down moment where myself as an actual, localizer and translator and interpreter, I actually had to face that reality. But then eventually what happened? It happened that we got brought back in because we needed to actually, polish everything that translator, that let's say AI-based translator actually did, because that part of humanity that is lacking in the robotic area is always needed, because at the end of the day, we're humans after all. So we need that part to actually make it better. So just think of it as when Google Translate came out. So there will be a time where everybody will be so hyped about AI and everybody will just choose that over something else. But then eventually they will, get back on their feet and just, no. We still need that human touch behind it. So even to support it, to polish it, or to just make it better. And yes, and you can just find me on LinkedIn, reach out, whatever. I don't have purple hair, but I used to. But you can just find me. So Laura Gagliardi everywhere. And also it's my website. So just tap on it. You just basically type it and all my social accounts are right there. So feel free to reach out. I'm available.
Gosh, I want to thank all three of you again and again. I learned so much in our prep sessions, and I feel like I'm learning even more and more through this experience. So I need to continue to dive in, get my hands dirty, get my feet wet, whatever however you want to put it. And I want to thank again all of our guests who joined us today. Thank you so much. I loved seeing the involvement in the chat. Hopefully we were able to answer some of your questions, but guess what? This won't be our last conversation with creatives. Creative Circle is really excited to continue to support you in bringing creatives together, sharing different perspectives, and having these really important conversations as our industry continues to evolve. We want to continue to support you. So as a reminder, we are going to distribute this recording and the chat over the next few days. And then definitely bookmark creativecircle.com, AI resources. You're going to see a variety of different resources there. Stay tuned. Follow us on LinkedIn, follow us on Instagram, and keep an eye on your inboxes as we're creating more and more content around AI, answering your questions. And again, like I said, hopefully holding more of these conversations with creatives in the future. So if you have an idea or a theme or topic that you would like us to cover, please do share with us. And we hope you enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you so much.
Thanks, you, everyone. Bye. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.